made in Africa, the need to decolonize evaluation. We thank the people who are working on that. I saw Majib doing a PhD on this issue, Bagela, and many others who have talked about decoloniality and the need to focus on African ideologies. So this all give us a sense that even with COVID-19, we have work which is still continuing. Evaluators are responsive. We have then had the Eval for Action campaign in Africa. This has been led by AFREA, the AFREA Young and Emerging Evaluators, and the Eval partners. And here we have had regional consultations to deepen development of an African action plan to advocate for influential evaluation. We are looking at how do we move towards the SDGs and the 2063 agenda of the AU. So we have some work going on in that light, and hopefully that will help us nurture the Made in Africa processes, and we move forward. I want to mention a last piece of work which was commissioned by colleagues at the UN. I happen to be part of the evaluation reference group, and we're looking at the early lessons and evaluability of UN COVID-19 response and recovery. A lot of money was injected in Africa and other parts of the world to see if we can address issues of COVID-19 pandemic and the crisis they are in. The report has just come out, and it shows that VOPEs have had many issues facing them. The demand for evaluation is also low, but the preparedness of all institutions to address the challenges of crisis is still low. So I would like to stop at that point and give chance to others to contribute. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor.
Please, Mokgophana.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Mayor Rosetti, for setting the tone for us. Thanks, Nanou. I think there are two elements to the questions you asked. The first is about the experiences of the VOPEs, and the second being what were some of the challenges. To start with, at a country level, I think it's important for us as SAMEA to state the vision that guides the work that we do. And I would like to read out the SAMEA's vision, which is about ensuring that M&E is widely recognized in South Africa as a profession and discipline essential to developing and practiced and used. So it's really about being recognized, but beyond being recognized, it's practiced and it's been applied to influence the development trajectory of the country. And having said that, maybe the question is then about how did SAMEA respond to COVID or during COVID and as we speak. I think fundamentally there's a principle of collaboration that was embraced by the organization, where we ensured that, because we have realized the type of work and the complexities we're dealing with requires us to engage with external stakeholders. Firstly, at the government level, we do have existing relationships with the department responsible for M&E in the country. We have meetings with them. We've engaged them around this, so that informed our response. Also, the development aid agencies, we also partnered with them, those who are financial and non-financials, to provide technical support in the work that we are doing. And it is from that type of a collaboration as a principle that informed interventions that we came to implement as a VOPE. Take, for instance, we had of course, by virtue of the pandemic, we had to implement virtual capacity building initiatives. And most significantly for us was that these initiatives were supported by funders. We all know that the extent to which COVID has affected most of the practitioners, most of us couldn't afford either to spend money to pay for a training activity and so forth. Therefore, that required that there must be some level of subsidization of our members to be able to participate in these activities. And SAMEA has successfully managed to do that, which is really for us a success story. And I think that was a success story based on the fact that our partners that we've approached bought into the idea of partnering with us to subsidize these activities. But also, most importantly, there were systems that were meant to be in place. I mean, moving virtually, it was something that was new to us. We had to put systems in place, invest a bit in setting up those systems. That took some level of resources from our side as well, because we are committed to the cause. We did invest some money to facilitate this engagement. And I think what's also interesting, there were also peer-to-peer sessions around like webinars and so forth that were meant to capacitate or enable our members to grapple with this phenomenon around how they do their work, their daily jobs as within a crisis. And interesting enough, we should also mention that the current workshops which have started today, which SAMEA is delivering, are titled, are themed M&E in a crisis. And significantly so, are informed by the needs assessment that SAMEA has conducted previously. In other words, they're tailored to respond to the needs, the skills needs of our members, which is very, very interesting. And furthermore, we also collect evaluation forms at the end of most of the sessions, which then help us to think about what are the topics that are relevant to our members. So we have been doing that type of work during the crisis. But I think what is also important for us is the issue of fairness, because it's one of the principles that SAMEA believes in. And to this effect, we have also engaged in an emerging evaluator program, which really seeks to facilitate an entry point for most of our members. We know there are two problems. One problem is that there's a perception that there's fewer evaluators who are Black, specifically for the South African context. The second one is that there's lack of opportunities for for new entrants. So the program intends to facilitate that both the access and, of course, also to increase the number of the evaluators who are African. And I'm happy to report that today, as we speak, through our partnership with UNICEF and WFP, we are launching that program that is going to sort of absorb a number of EEs to do practical evaluations, and that will be funded by these partners. That's also one way of us to respond to during a crisis by availing opportunities. We've further extended our partnerships with government institutions. I mean, the institution that is responsible for capacity building for public service, which is called the National School of Government. We've engaged with them. We're in the process of signing an MOU with them, with the objective that M&E becomes one of the pillars or the component of training in South Africa. So this really means that government will be investing money training public servants around M&E. And fortunately, we're in a position where we can influence the curriculum that will be offered by the school and the courses that will be offered by the school, which I think for us, we think it's a good response to working within a crisis. But I think also most importantly, through these partnerships as well, we've also experimented with innovative modalities. We'll be implementing a hackathon program and a co-creation and also a co-creation model where we go into a session and we engage with colleagues, and the themes for these areas around, as Rosetti has already mentioned, issues of climate change, a promotion of Made in Africa evaluation. So in the case of these activities, we go into a room, but there will be outputs that are written up from these engagements, because we also know that one of the downfalls of the work that we do oftentimes from the continent is that we are very oral-oriented type of people. So fortunately for us, in the case of the work that we are engaging on, we're trying to also have outputs as written products that could be shared globally with communities across the world. And I think more specifically for SAMEA, as a practical example, there was a TIC a group of practitioners who are involved in the education sector, who continue to engage themselves and ask questions about how do we respond as a sector, as evaluators who are working in the education space. And there was that space that was created via SAMEA, where colleagues will come in, question the methodologies that are applicable to the current times, refurbish them, work on them, get ideas so that people, when they go back to their offices, to their desks, they're a bit empowered around such areas. I think overall, these are the major areas that SAMEA has managed to engage on. And what has been the challenges? Some of the challenges, of course, is that budgeting, government had to reprioritize the budgeting system. So evaluations, to some extent, has taken a knock. In other words, particularly because they had to have a social program to respond to the needs of the population. People are unemployed, they have to be given grants, they have to be given food, and so forth. I think for us, that could have been one of the challenges that we've confronted with. But fortunately for us, on the other hand, the importance of evidence was more elevated by evidence that was produced by the health professionals. I mean, because the government relied mainly on health professionals to advise them about how to go about addressing the pandemic. And I think that's a useful thing, because MNE is well positioned to provide evidence from evaluations. And I think going forward, government is going to realize that evaluation remains an important instrument where we can have evidence for policy making. And we're hoping that in the next few years or months, that will become the case. Nanou, thank you very much. I hope I've answered your questions.
No, certainly you've answered the question really well. So we are going to pass to Dede, and please, Dede, give us your view, your experiences, and the perception on the ground in Ghana and West Africa as a whole. Thank you.
Okay. Hello. Let me see if I can also do justice to your question in the few minutes I have. I think the pandemic actually threw a lot of us into quite a bit of uncertainty, and we were forced to hibernate for quite a while. So for 2019, even though we entered the year expecting to do so much, when the pandemic hit, we were set up into quite a bit of inertia for a while. But towards the end of the year, we managed to resurface, gathered ourselves up. And I think we are still on the way to recovery, even though funding is limited, and also physical interaction for us is still a bit of a tricky one. Now, what we did towards the end of 2020 then was to, as you said, the new normal is to work online. So we began to think about how we'll continue to build members' capacity in spite of the fact that we couldn't physically meet. So we organized online training for our members, again, on using online facilities for data collection and analysis. And we had quite a lot of members signing up. Now, because funding was a challenge, we actually got members to pay a small amount to ensure that we could at least give members who were experts and a few other people we got to support the training, something for their time and effort, and also to support the secretariat. And it went very well. Over 4 weeks or 4 weekends, it was actually on Saturdays, we managed to have this training. Then also, we are part of the CSO's platform of the SDGs in Ghana. And so we decided to provide technical support and some material support for a fund that was set up to support the vulnerable during the peak of the crisis. And so we helped them to come up with a plan and a framework for doing the monitoring and evaluation, and this contributed to the documentation and reporting. All this was done by a small team of our members who had the expertise, and they did all of this as their pro bono work with no payments, but they were happy to do it, and we are grateful. So by the end of 2020, we had a new contract with UNICEF. UNICEF is our main funder, and under this, we've managed to do a few activities since the end of 2020 to date. At present, we are working on an app for COVID-19 and SDGs data tracking for young people. So if you look at it, you find out that it's tailored towards the needs of young people and children. So it's for the youth and children, for them to be able to monitor both national and international data and information on the SDGs and COVID-19. It will be a place for them to share and learn on different issues related to the goals and COVID-19. And we'll work with organizations that work with children and young people to manage the app. It will be on Android so that people and children can use their phones and link in as groups and work with each other. We also have a review of selected COVID-19 activities in the country ongoing. We, owing to funding constraints, we couldn't cover the whole country. So we selected 4 regions from 4 different parts of the country. And in each region, we are looking at 2 districts, trying to understand the impact of the support that people received during COVID-19, and then the peak of it and how this has impacted their lives and what difference it has made. The data gathering is done. We are presently working on the draft report. Then we also went ahead to work with the CSO platform to set up some regional and district M&E networks. That's the plan. And we recognize that given the circumstances at the moment, it wouldn't actually be possible to go to all the 16 regions of the country. So we decided that since we had covered most of the, 10 of the old regions, and we would look at the 6 new regions and see if we could start up small capacity building. And this time, because the numbers are fewer, we would actually do physical meetings. And we've managed to go to 3 of the 6 new regions so far. And as I speak, today there's a session going on in the Northeast region with some of our members who are experts in the area, talking to people, interacting with them and having a training session for various CSOs and government officials in that region. Then we've looked at how to promote M&E learning and networking activities with other institutions. So earlier in the year, I think about a month ago, we joined the University of Development Studies in one of their learning events to talk about inclusive education and how M&E supports that process. We're also working with government agencies on other tools and mechanisms for the national system. So we've tried to influence, and actually we did a lot of lobbying around the drafting of a national M&E policy. It's stuck now because the national ministry on M&E has been changed, and now it's under the office of the president. So we are still pushing to ensure that this finally gets presidential assent, and then it will be implemented. We've also been working with the National Development Planning Commission on the National Information System on M&E. Now, it's a tool that, if it actually gets to work well, will help us to be able to work with big data, especially across the country, making it available to practitioners and also to government agencies so that M&E will be more systematic and it will rely on data that is more robust. So in a summary, this is what we've been doing as an organization. And yes, the times are hard, but I think we are still managing to forge ahead and do a little bit under the circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dede. That was actually, that was impressive what is happening in Ghana, as well as Mokgophana, what's happening in South Africa. It seems we can say in terms of responsiveness, really the VOPEs have been very agile. Now, I just want to remind everyone that you do have the chat option of putting in your questions or any kind of clarification that you might need. We are 30 minutes to the end of our session. However, we do have space for one question. And Mokgophana, this question actually is related to you, but however, Rosetti and Dede, please feel free to join in. The question is for you, Mokgophana. Has there been or is there a formal agreement between SAMEA and DME, such as a memorandum of understanding? And if there is, whether it is formal or informal, please elaborate the content and how that would impact the VOPEs moving forward post-COVID-19.
Yeah, Thank you very much for the question. Yes, we do have for DPME. I suspect that could be the department Fanuel is referring to. We do have an existing, a long-standing MOU, and I think we have a meeting with them scheduled for next week, Monday. We'll be extending the MOU to look, because we sort of collaborate on various areas. For instance, there's also, they also funded our emerging evaluator database, which we have just developed a database so that it's easy to know the number of the EEs that are looking for opportunities, what are their names, what are their interests, and so forth, so that if there's a possible employers, they do have access, and we have a list of them. They funded that. We are also going to be working with them around conducting an evaluation mapping of some sort. We're in discussion with them around that, which is an area of research that we think we should be able to influence as a VOPE. So yes, the answer is yes to that. We, in most cases, even with the donors, we do have MOUs that we sign with them, and then gets renewed over a period of time. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Mokgophana. Rosetti and Dede, do you have any memorandum of understanding? Because I do remember that, Dede, you've mentioned that you do work in close hand with UNICEF. What are some of the activities, just very, very briefly, that you are focusing on towards making sure that VOPEs' ability post-COVID-19 is going to be much more effective, efficient, and also adaptable to the new normal?
Yes, so we do have an agreement with UNICEF for capacity building support, also for research, also working on the app for young people. And there's also some work that's going to be done on child rights monitoring in the country. So, and this will be with both a government agency and CSOs. So yes, we do have a formal agreement with UNICEF. And for the government side, what they have done is to include us in some of the boards and steering committees on things that have to do with M&E. So when I spoke about the mechanisms earlier, these are all formal arrangements where we actually have a rep sitting either on a board or a steering committee for the government agency.
Thank you, Dede. Another question, but I will get back to you. I will let Rosetti come in and add a little bit of what is happening at the global level on exactly also what is AFREA doing to ensure that there's this level of sustainability moving forward.
Thank you very much. At AFREA, we also recognize the challenges, just like the two VOPEs have enumerated, but luckily enough, most of the associations that have adapted. And I'm glad to say that given the work done by different VOPEs, new VOPEs are emerging, like Namibia and other places, and we are glad about that. So in terms of support, we have continued making available information and events where the evaluators, whether they're in VOPEs or outside the VOPEs, can actually participate actively to grow the capacities. We also have an ongoing, and this has been on for some time, an ongoing process of having an MOU between CLEAR-AA and AFREA. And here we are trying to say, when you look at these VOPEs, many of them have again gone back into strengthening the membership, because the crisis has affected institutions. And instead of going out to work with other partners, they are also concerned about retaining members, getting some payment, and all that. So we are trying to work on an MOU where we try to nudge them towards working with the broader system, evaluation ecosystem. And we realize that the crisis we have cannot be solved by anyone alone. Not even VOPEs can bring a solution. It has to be centered in what governments are doing. And therefore, in these MOUs, we want to see how do we nudge the VOPEs to work more closely with the governments and offer support to them. And The other aspect is also moving them into programmatic approaches rather than small projects, evaluating and discussing small projects. Because when you look at how governments are working, they are already ahead talking about outcomes. Recently, for instance, in Uganda, IMF has come on board in government. I had not seen it before in government work other than in the economic side. And now they are saying they want to do M&E of COVID expenditure. And the people who are involved in such work are not really so bothered about what methodology works, how you put together the data, the credibility. You just think about it and people go to the field and find out if COVID-19 expenditures are good. So it means we have to widen and cast our net a bit wider beyond what we are used to and look for partners who have not traditionally been working with us in Africa, who are now coming, and they will come with different methods. Some of them, we don't know what these methods are. So this can cause confusion, but otherwise, that's how we're moving. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rosetti. It's actually great to have the point of view at the global level and to see how there's a lot of traction, as well as how we are going to monitor COVID-19 relief. So this gives VOPEs a break and also a breakthrough to work with governments in regards to evaluation methodologies and ensuring that there is accountability in regards to resources to counteract this pandemic. Now, briefly, we're running out of time. So for the next question, I hope that the presenters are going to be very, very brief. And the question is, what lessons have we learned as practitioners and VOPEs about monitoring and evaluation practice and the place of VOPEs in countries' monitoring and evaluation policy ecosystems? Rosetti has already touched on that a little bit, but if we can be very brief on that so that we will be able to respond to some of the questions that are coming into the chat. I'm going to let you, Mokgophana, to start with that, and then followed by Dede, and Rosetti will give us a global overview to that response. So Mokgophana, it's all yours. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Nanou. I think for me, the point, without repeating what Rosetti was saying, the point around the collaboration, it remains more urgent and more important because the development is a very complex space. It looks like we might need to strike more partnerships, more collaborations across the board to ensure that the work we do could be replicated much more faster and much more easier. And also in times of uncertainties, I think for me, partnerships remain key. So that would be my advice. And I think beyond this as well, when we start measuring the extent to which COVID have affected us, it would be ideal if we sort of propose the methodologies that we've been pushing for as sort of we experiment with, because that will also give us an opportunity for those who want to measure the extent to which COVID has affected us. That would be my contribution. Thanks, Nanou.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Mokgophana. Please, Dede, go ahead.
Okay. From our end, what we found is that it actually helps to keep members involved. Clearly now it's about online training, online capacity building, and we need to encourage and help people to acquire more skills, share new knowledge and tools. What we found is our WhatsApp platform is a great tool for doing that, but also encouraging people to actually go through short trainings online and make sure that it actually pays. Where it's possible, we ask people to pay a token fee, and we found out that those who value the training do actually support it with their money. And we've also found out that I noticed Matozi is asking how we get people to work pro bono. It's the toughest question. But then what I've found is that where funding is available, we make sure that we provide some honorarium. Where it's not possible, then we try to raise some funding for programs and projects. And we try to use our members for these projects so that people actually get to benefit from the development work that we do. It doesn't all go out to other people. And along with that, we are trying to have a small mentorship scheme where our youths, the young people, get to work with the professionals and the experts in the field and pick up some skills. And of course, because we are a network, we are not trying to make this too formal. It will kill the fun of the whole thing. So we make it as flexible as possible, but we get members to learn and share along the way. Now, not everybody is going to be excited about the development work we do, because for many people, it's all about coming in and being a professional. I want certification, which is great, I agree. But the truth of the matter is, if all you're known for is who you are and your credentials, but you do not give anything back to society, then who do you want to support you out there? So we need to encourage our members to recognize that giving something to society is important. Now, this brings me to another lesson we have picked up, that personal and external networks need to be maintained. So members have their own networks, and we need to piggyback and promote and support these networks. If you have government workers, they become your link to working with government agencies. When we have CSO members, they are support when we move out into the field. So sometimes it means we pool resources together and we try to collaborate. Now, this calls for sacrifice and volunteerism. Now, these aren't things that are common these days. Nobody wants to hear that you want them to be a volunteer and do anything for free. But with some coordination, time there's a training and we need to recommend somebody, you get it. And the next time there's a request for an organization to take up a job, GMEF will be your reference. And we do get a lot of people writing to us, wanting us to give them experts to work on different jobs. And of course, the first people on the list are those who have supported our programs. So I think for us, these are some of the key lessons. And of course, at the end of the day, is also trying to raise funds, both internally and externally, encouraging members to actually pay dues and also support projects that are for us as members. Thank you.
All right, can I come in?
Yes, please do, Rosetti.
Oh, okay, thank you very much. And I appreciate the issues raised by my colleagues. There is something I noted using the Uganda Evaluation Association as an example, and I'm sure it is happening in many associations. When we were meeting physically, you would get an average of 50 people, less than 50, and you spend about $700 trying to get people in one room who are going to eat something and drink and then talk, and you don't know how much they have gone away with. Now, with the COVID-19, the situation has changed. With online platforms, we have between 163 participants to 200, and we use less than $100 to meet online. And this poses a new lesson for us that as we move forward, even when COVID has gone, we must harness the digital approaches and technologies and include them in the way we work, because it's more cost effective, we reach more people, and it is the way to go. But also we note challenges that as we go digital, it becomes a challenge to do quality assurance and adherence to evaluation ethics, because when you don't see someone in the face, you don't know what they're doing, you don't know what they're thinking, you don't know how they produce the piece of work. So these are issues that we have to grapple with. And maybe lastly, from my work with the UN COVID-19 evaluation group, there were some lessons that emerged from the study they did in about 120 countries. One of them was that in a development emergency, speed to response matters. We must be very, very agile. But this comes with challenges because you're trying to pull institutions that have been operating in a certain mode, and suddenly we are all saying, can you move, and we go somewhere else. So there must be processes that we are going to work with too. you'll find that we are used to discuss VOPE, one in Uganda, one in Tanzania, another one in South Africa. But at the time, because development is so interconnected, there is uncertainty, there is volatility, the world is volatile, and what happens in one country will affect the rest of the countries. It means that we need now to think of new models of bringing our VOPEs into sub-regions, and they work on similar issues, learn from each other, rather than saying I have a VOPE on the other side and the other one. So these are the reflections which we are having at AFREA, and I thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Rosetti, for this, of highlighting actually the importance of quality assurance in evaluation, and also the importance of ethics, also with the VOPEs, and the need for having new ways of bringing VOPEs together instead of them just working in silos is actually, I think, one of the keys for sustainability of the VOPEs in general. Now, moving forward, we don't have a question in the chat box, but one of the things that I captured in our discussion is that, this is actually a question for, perhaps you can start, Rosetti, is that in the light of COVID-19 pandemic, how do you see VOPE's role in influencing and enhancing the demand for evaluation and the use of evaluation results, particularly by governments? Because you did mention that evaluators are now working with government, for example, the IMF resources that was provided. So how have they used their skills and also their agility to ensure, working with government to ensure that there's this level of accountability that is maintained, and that also fueling the demand for evaluation?
Oh, thank you very much. First of all, we have to recognize that Africa, in some parts of Africa, there is a high level of evaluative culture, and there is no evaluation culture in other parts of Africa. And this affects both VOPEs and governments, depending on the political environment. As you know, Africa is going through a transition. Many countries are going through leadership change. Young people are coming up, and many of these have never even experienced issues of monitoring and evaluation. And this is why we need now to move to strengthening the young and emerging evaluators, because those are the ones who are going to be our leaders of now and in the future. You may have a lot of expertise in a VOPE, but the linkage to the landscape of planning, budgeting, and taking intervention may be very weak. So I can see that the role of VOPEs as we move forward, one, to strengthen beyond just the institution, but the technical expertise internally to be able to talk to someone else. You cannot go to support another entity when you yourself don't know M&E sufficiently. You know, many of the people who know M&E, if you look at along the landscape, we have lost many of them. Some have died of COVID-19, some have retired, and now new faces have come. So it means skilling is going to be very, very important in VOPEs, and then finding how best do we get ourselves involved in government work. Already in a country like Uganda, that is already has been achieved, because most of VOPE members are members of government, but that's not the case in other countries. So we still have a long way to go. I can't say I have the answers, but I would say collaboration is very important, because no institution in Africa is sufficient and has adequate capacity to work on its own. We must be facing in the same direction, add our issues together, and we try to help the VOPEs to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rosetti, for that, and also highlighting the value of collaboration. Dede, what is the situation in Ghana? How are VOPEs working with governments to and also with other organizations to fuel the demand for evaluation?
Thank you. Again, as Rosetti said, a lot of it is around capacity building. But again, from my experience, it's about collaboration. keeping the links with government open so that we have members who are government employees and so on. We also have CSOs and the media and the private sector, all of them with us. So we try as much as possible to foster relationships where we can talk to each other and work together. My personal experience, both from the kind of work I've done previously, but also coordinating GMEF, is that we can actually support government and work with government to meet everyone's needs. And I think this is where it's important that VOPEs recognize that even though we may be very strong, government is still the biggest support source of the big data or routine administrative data that we need for M&E. So we cannot afford to ignore how that is developed, how that is collected and generated. So as much as possible, we want to keep government on its toes about M&E, but we also need to work with them and try not to be the enemy. Sometimes I think the way we approach government is so confrontational that they actually push us away. But we need to be firm and fair and recognize that they have challenges and constraints as well. So in our case, we try to encourage members to be as much a part of national processes as possible. And then sometimes we actually go out to broker these relationships. It might mean that we initiate a project and bring government participation on board, just to ensure that there's some space and collaboration for sharing. And also we integrate the DPs so that UNICEF, World Bank, UNDP, all these other partners that we have worked with before are kept in the debate and the discussion as well. So I think that is one of the things we need to encourage VOPEs to do, seek for more collaboration. And the more we collaborate and people actually see the value addition that we bring, you find out that they are more interested in M&E and want to collaborate better with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Dede. That was actually, that's indeed the case. And most important, also highlighting that when VOPEs do work with governments, it is important to take an approach that does not look very confrontational in order to have this partnership collaboration. So Mokgophana, I would like to bring in the experience of SAMEA, which has a very good relationship with the government of South Africa. Perhaps you can give us some steps as to how this relationship has been very well solidified and cemented in South Africa, and what are the lessons you have learned that other VOPEs and any government representative in this session might be able to take forward?
Thanks a lot, Nanou. I think for me, because we're fortunate also in South Africa that most of our members are from government, are government employees. And I mean, at a strategic level, at times we sort of persuade them to be part of SAMEA so that they are also able to go back to government and sort of champion the work of SAMEA. That could be one way of doing it, so that public officials themselves champion the program of SAMEA. And that has a high level of influence in how government thinks and do things. That's a very soft way of trying to engage them. And we're also engaging with the Parliament of South Africa, because we know that they're responsible for the legislative framework. We're engaging with them to sort of go into an MOU. I mean, for us, that's also a very strategic move, where we're trying to influence at different layers of government. I mean, we've been struggling a bit with the local level. We're yet to sort of strike some partnerships with the local level, and in South Africa, the local level is the most important one, because that's where service delivery takes place. But I think with time, we should be able to engage those colleagues at that level to think about collaborating with SAMEA. And one of the things we think we should do, it's also to invite them in our discussions, so that they also bring a view from the public sector point of view, because government is a very dynamic institution. It has quite a range of bureaucratic systems in place that sometimes become constraints. There's also a level of appreciation from ourselves as practitioners to understand that there's a way government works, and we have to appreciate that those constraints and also understand its functions, how it functions, how it operates, how it moves, and so forth, so that we position ourselves at different entry points to be able to be part of the entire system. But generally, I think the relationship with DPME and having officials of government being part of the board, I think it has really yielded some that would be part of my advice to colleagues who will be starting VOPEs or who are yet to have public servants as part of their boards. And I mean, for us, we're also very intentional about it, that when we look at board members, we also try and stretch our representation to make sure that it represents different sectors, because then those board members become the voices of how we speak to different sectors and stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you, Mokgophana, for that. And well, that was really, we've looked at it from the global level. We went to West Africa and also South Africa to see how VOPEs can be able to push this agenda for the demand for evaluation, and how it is important to approach the government in a way that is focused more on collaboration rather than competition. And I think that is something that we have to take key, because again, evaluation is very, very sensitive, and especially for government. So in order to push for that demand, it has to be with an approach of collaboration and partnership and capacity building. Now, one of the questions that we have here that is for you, sorry, I'm trying to get to my questions. Please give me one moment, is I think the idea was for you, Rosetti. The question is, if you could expand on what AFREA is thinking of doing to support regional collaboration, and how do you foresee regional representative in the AFREA board playing a regional coordination role?
Thank you very much. In our board, we have representatives, 5 representatives of regions. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this session, we all have to reposition, because the crisis didn't spare us as well. And when you are coordinating entities, you don't start from where you stopped. You actually have to step back and say exactly what is happening in the landscape where I'm doing collaboration. Because we find that many VOPEs which we are working with actually are facing different challenges. Some are institutional, others are just leadership and governance issues which are affecting the performance. So from a collaborative perspective, yes, welcome the issue that the regional coordinators would play a key role in galvanizing collaboration within areas, but that also needs some spelling out exactly the how. I wouldn't say I have the how. I know they have been sharing information and working with specific VOPEs where need arises, but now we are talking about working across borders, connecting different entities to work together. That will require a new kind of skill. Luckily, I want to invite you for the AFREA conference, which will take place on 21st to 24th September 2021 in Ethiopia, but we think most of the people will be online, to discuss this kind of issues. And this is a year when we are going to do elections as well. So I hope that members can be interested and bring all these issues. And when you apply to be a regional coordinator, you already understand the challenge that everybody is looking at. And maybe the role of a regional coordinator must be redefined from what it was. It's easier to say regional representative, but the definition and exactly what is done is changing. It's no longer the same. So we too have to reposition to understand how we can even further improve this role such that we are able to galvanize action within the VOPEs. And we do welcome your suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosetti, for also inviting us for AFREA. Please, everyone, do attend the AFREA sessions, whether it's going to be physically or also online. There's a lot for us to learn, especially at the continental level, in regards to what I think both Rosetti as well as Mokgophana did mention earlier, decolonizing, evaluation, and developing methodologies that are much more suited to the continent as a whole. I was just going through the chat section, and I saw Sakina from the government of Tanzania actually mentioned that it is important for VOPEs approaches to government to be much more diplomatic. So Sakina, if you are still online, may I please give you an opportunity to explain why this is very important coming from somebody who works with government. You can unmute yourself and yeah, just briefly inform.
Thank you very much. I've been following the presentation and the whole discussion, and it's so fruitful to me. And actually, my points has just come to cement on what representative from Ghana has presented. That when the problem that we are getting with these VOPs when they are contacting or they are approaching the government, it's like they are forgetting that the government has got their own procedures and they have got their own means of attending things. So sometimes they face those difficulties because of maybe challenges to cope with how the government works. But I'll just give an example for maybe for a VOP, maybe pushing an agenda for having a national policy for MWNE. You cannot go there direct and pushing agenda to have a policy. They could have another approaches like maybe conducting training and to the government officials who are dealing with MWNE, just to give that kind of awareness on how MWNE it is. And then in the process, when the government officials are getting into use, they know how MWNE it is, how important it is. They will initiate the agenda themselves without even being pushed by the VOPs. So that's what I was saying. The approaches sometimes need to be changed. You don't need to go straight to the point. Sometimes you have to go through other means just to prepare them for the matter that you want to advocate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sakina. There's something you mentioned which is extremely important. Again, this is very much on the approach. So my last question is, and here with a huge focus on SAMEA and GMEF, is how do you see in your experience how VOPEs during the pandemic, first and foremost, enhance the evaluation profession to take more of a global approach, not at the local level, but more of a global approach to contributing to the identification and solution of world problems such as COVID-19. Because so far we've looked at the impact of COVID-19, but now we want to see which kind of approach are they taking to find solutions, whether it is in regards to evaluation or something else, towards finding solutions to world problems. You can, SAMEA, Mokgophana, you can go first, and then we can move to Dede later. Thank you.
Oh, thanks a lot, Nanou. I think for me, one way could be engagements of this nature, but also resulting in documented lessons. Because one of the challenges, as I said earlier, was that we like engagements, we like orating our stories, which is good. But for us to share experiences, we might think about writing these lessons so that they begin to influence other ways of thinking. Beyond just sharing the experiences of COVID, also the issue that I said earlier around the methodologies, what is it that we are proposing to the world, and how will it look like? How does it work? What are the benefits of those approaches? I think that's the contribution that the world is missing out there. And that explains, I mean, it's a historical problem, but I think we're in a position where we are able now to share these lessons. It doesn't have to be academic and dense. At times it could just be a blog, it could be an article and so forth, where we share these experiences. Another big opportunity I'm realizing is for us to learn from the Tendembele program, which was promoting peer-to-peer learning across different countries. My appeal would be that VOPEs start thinking about that type of a program where different VOPEs in the region have a platform where they can share lessons. I mean, Rosetti spoke already about rethinking around how AFREA coordinates itself. So I think if we think and apply ourselves to that extent, I believe that this is an area which could attract some funding, where VOPEs themselves begin to learn from one another, from each other. I think that's another area that I think we can share to the world, because our experiences are quite unique, and the world is really waiting for us to share these experiences beyond just talking about them, beyond lamenting about the dominance of Western knowledge systems. But we do have an opportunity for us to contribute to the discourse in the work that we do. And of course, ultimately, the work, how we think about things will generally have an effect on the evaluation and how it gets practiced. That would be my contribution, Nanou. Thank you.
Thank you, Mokgophana. Dede, please give us briefly your opinion in this matter.
Thank you, Nanou. Yes, I agree with everything that Mokgophana said. Yes, and I think even building on that is that even AFREA can play a role in the peer-to-peer sharing. I remember I can see some members from ZEA here. We had a great experience with them with support from AFREA a few years ago. And for both of us, it was very helpful. We got to learn a bit from them. They also learned a bit from us. So we need to promote a lot more of that. Now, whilst physical interaction is difficult, I think we need to explore the internet as much as possible. Digitization is the thing now. All of us have no choice but to do it. And so we need to promote more sharing and learning online. Now, what we notice is that WhatsApp is great for sharing materials. It's great for putting out documentation, like he said, but also to share what is going on elsewhere with members. We are looking at an app for young people because they love their phones so much. So now don't just go online to check on what's the latest gossip and what's on Instagram, but go on an app that will tell you more about what's happening in the world on the SDGs or COVID-19. And so we need to promote a lot more of these things that will create opportunities and places for people to share and learn from each other. And I think that definitely is a good way to ensure that we are collaborating more across the globe. I think our work with the DPs is also another area that we should use to promote some of this learning. Most of them are global anyway. So we need to encourage them also to share what's happening elsewhere with our members, and also give us the opportunity to share what we are doing with the rest of the world. Just about 2 days ago, I was in a meeting that UNICEF convened with the Philippines. And so it gave us an opportunity to share what we are doing with young people here, and also learn from the Philippines about some of their programs they actually have youth councils there. So it was interesting to hear about how young people are a key part of government there. So all these are ways in which I think we can actually promote a more global way of thinking. And I like the idea that we are looking at regionalization, not just in the sense of bringing our VOPEs together in sub-regions, but more about building capacity and sharing across countries and borders. Thank you.
Thank you, Dede, for that, and both yourself and Mokgophana highlighting the value of peer-to-peer learning. I guess this is something that really has been going on, but in light of COVID and in light to the opportunity that the digital technology has actually provided us, is something that we should actually jump on the bandwagon and push the agenda of evaluation, and also the role of the VOPEs in ensuring sustainability of the field as a profession. One thing you both mentioned was how AFREA has been very instrumental in this peer-to-peer learning. So I'm going to let Rosetti, if it's possible, to give us why is this so useful for AFREA, and where does AFREA see the value in pushing the South-South learning, peer-to-peer learning, especially at the continental level? Rosetti, it's yours.
Thank you very much. The peer-to-peer which we held, and I'm glad our colleague Adeline Sibanda is here, because it was done before I was president, when she was president, and it has carried on. There's a lot of learning, even if we don't do the kind that was done at that time. There's a lot of learning between associations and friends between different places. And it's very important because going back to the question which you asked my colleagues, taking a global approach to find a solution, from the AFREA side, you would say that from the global perspective, you want to encourage the VOPEs to do transformative evaluations or promote that kind of work, and working across borders such that we can learn from one end to another. Some VOPEs are extremely so developed that even the donors are looking for them, whereas others don't have anything. So if we learn from each other, we can actually grow evenly across Africa. But as we learn from the global perspectives, we must retain our African focus and nurture it, ensuring that the intellectual content of M&E speaks to African context, cultures, and values. And that's why we are producing the African evaluation guidelines. We are reviewing them. They should be ready by the conference time for discussion. And we also have a project of USDS where we are doing some work on how do you do research, but in the Made in Africa setting. So I would like to say the peer-to-peer is very important, and especially when you recognize that more than 60% of Africans are young. Now the young are globally inclined, they are connected, they are more connected than the older ones. We who have been in the evaluation system, we keep things near our chest, and we say, this is what I'm working on. But the young people want to work with someone in Afghanistan or something. So if we recognize that, there are certain barriers that are going to emerge, whereby when you are older, you're telling them, keep to this methodology, they will tell you, I don't like it. For us young people want these other things. So this South to South learning should be able to help us find middle ground on what do we really take forward from the African perspective in terms of monitoring and evaluation. How do we approach governments? And as Dede said, that's very important. And so I would say, yes, the peer-to-peer remains an important thing. And I've seen in the chat room, Jim posting for us some link where we can go to look for more of them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rosetti, for that, and also actually highlighting the importance of transformative evaluation. And it's not just about peer-to-peer, but it's also the issue of mentorship, of how the youth are currently being mentored towards becoming more effective and useful, I would say, evaluators. But at the same time, the youth are very innovative and they want to go global while also being local. So that is really one of the ways in which we can ensure we are the VOPEs are remaining agile in the face of COVID and also post the COVID pandemic era. I will, Jim, I can see that you have provided a link towards the peer-to-peer. I encourage everybody to click on that link and see what you can learn from that in regards to learning in the field of evaluation. But I would also like to welcome you, Jim, if that is okay, to give us just a brief overview on your, just briefly, your personal opinion to peer-to-peer learning, considering you are somebody who's written extensively on VOPEs?
I would just recommend you look at the website because it talks about what past grants have been given by eval partners for peer-to-peer learning, and it has a list of them, but also talks about, like, I'm looking at the top of the website there, there's a new call in 2021 for peer-to-peer learning. And I think, as Rosetti has already mentioned, there's some good experience that has been shared across VOPEs. So I would recommend anybody here that is involved in their VOPE to take a look at that website and get involved.
Thank you, Jim. So please do click the link and try and get involved. There's always an opportunity to learn from what other VOPEs are doing. I've also been in the chat and I can see from Shilok, I hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly, where I know you're from Zimbabwe, and also a VOPE. Would it be, I just want to see from your point of view, what you consider as pertinent towards the responsiveness of VOPEs post-COVID-19, and also how the activities have been impacted, or the activities of Zimbabwe Evaluation Association has been impacted by COVID-19. What are the lessons you learned, and moving forward, what you intend to do to be able to be more adaptable? If we could have that very, very briefly.
Thanks for the invitation to contribute, and kind greetings to the rest of the colleagues on the platform. I think pretty much most of the issues that are facing VOPEs have been discussed by my colleagues in terms of the lapse between funding and keeping your members engaged and so on. But I think not to evade your question, but I'm just going to speak to something very important that we've seen as an association. And this is to do with the peer-to-peer learning. So there is the peer-to-peer that IOC organized, and we were beneficiary of that. And that really leapfrogs Zimbabwe Evaluation Association through the support we get from GMEF. And out of our assessment, the OCAT assessment that was implemented, the findings of that audit actually led us to secure two huge funding opportunities, one with UNICEF and the other one with the SNV, the Netherlands Development Organization. And it was quite unique in the sense that UNICEF would provide financial and also technical support, but SNV gave us a lot of systems support. So how do you do requisitions, your HR manual, all sorts of things that most VOPEs would not be able to afford, governance, assessments, and all those sorts. Unfortunately, our funding ran out, and then we've seen a shift in the reprioritization of funding across the globe. But I'm glad to say we have a team within UNICEF that's still in touch with us to renew our PCA with a greater focus on capacity building for YEEs. At least our institutional system is up and running. And then networks, also very important, because at the time we were working with Gertrude, but Gertrude is now moved to the UN Resident Coordinator's Office. So she's reaching out from the Resident Coordinator's office as well, in order for us to formalize another contract or formal agreement with ZIA. So what we've been doing as well during the COVID times, I think we were quite vibrant in the initial days when sort of the vibe took place online, and a lot of people could participate in our capacity building exercises, but that has gone down because I think a lot of people now are all working online. But you see that picking up quite shortly as we reconvening for our our AGM, I think, which is also very important. One thing that's really discussed in terms of compliance and governance for VOPEs. And then lastly, I think I also want to highlight the fact that we've also started what we're calling sort of horizontal peer-to-peer, where we reach out to VOPEs on our own. So not through AFREA, not through IOC, because we are colleagues working in the same space. Lately, we've been interacting with SAMEA, we've been interacting with the Evaluation Society of Kenya. And one of the benefits out of that relationship has been, and we boast, we've been able to set up our VOPE to run purely on an open source platform. And this we've benefited from the IT savvy tech team within Evaluation Society of Kenya. So we've even overtaken the Evaluation Society of Kenya itself by being able to complete all the components on our website. We've got a free conference platform, setting up a free meetings as well. We've got the election portal up and running. That's where we are going to be doing our AGM and so on. Previously, our previous elections were done through the online platform that was hosted by AFREA. So we're bringing in also a lot of transparency in how we do things. So our previous elections, if you go on the website, you actually see we were hosted through AFREA, and it's a service that other VOPEs can also reach out towards. I think we've got a lot to talk. You talked about MOUs. Zia has got an MOU with Parliament that is running for 5 years. We've been able to deploy our human skills to support them in the process of developing their strategic plan. Once the strategic plan is out, there are a lot of capacity areas for which Zia needs to start fundraising. We've shared this information with CLEAR just to help us support on the fundraising side. We've been invited by the UNDP, Ministry of Environment, and Ministry of Agriculture to provide advice on some of the nationally led evaluations. So there's been work that's going on. It's only that I think time is of essence, but I'll stop here. But I hope it has given people a glimpse of also what we're doing here in Zim in collaboration with our colleagues.
No, certainly it's given a glimpse of what is happening, and even more important is we see how peer-to-peer actually moves from country to country, and the role of South-South learning, how you were able to get assistance from the Kone Evaluation Association, if I'm not wrong, and that's actually impressive. And this is actually what we need at the continental level, to leapfrog evaluation into something that is taken more seriously, even at the global level. So I want to thank all of you today for attending this session. It has been a lot of learning, especially for me, and I hope it has been also a lot of lessons for you. We've seen how VOPEs have been able to transcend the impact of the impact of the COVID-19 to still remain relevant and to still be agile and even moving stronger with the lessons they have learned. They have been able to adapt themselves effectively, efficiently, and are ready to tackle the post-COVID-19 era as we are moving in. So the new normal seems to be something that the VOPEs are much more able to tackle, and that's it's good to learn in regards to what has been happening on the ground. For me, the takeaway has been that peer-to-peer learning is extremely instrumental, not only in the responsiveness of VOPEs in regards to the pandemic, but also moving forward, because it contributes effectively to better methodologies and also contributing to ensuring that evaluators continue to build their capacity in a way that is actually necessary, because again, in evaluation, capacity building is important. It is an ever evolving field where we constantly need to learn what is happening and what will be happening. So I understand the youth being globally in tune, but also locally infused in the world of evaluation. One of the things that as we go forward, we have to consider is that as VOPEs wish to work with governments, because government interaction is especially important in how VOPEs can be able to undertake their work on the ground, is reaching out and working with governments in a more collaborative manner, in partnership and not in competition. Again, the digital world has pushed us into what we call innovation. And one of the things that both Rosetti and also Mokgophana mentioned was how the issues of co-creating such ideas, the hackathons, the Made in Africa evaluation, transformative evaluation, peer-to-peer learning, and also the opportunities that have been availed for the youth, I think in Africa is impressive. And it is great to see that there's this mentorship happening as well. I think we are heading towards the end of our session. We should be closing in 1 minute, so we are on time. We will keep your email addresses. I do not know if perhaps Matotsi, there's one final thing you want to say in regards to data, whether you will be sharing the webinar with the participants. Please let us know so that they will be informed as to whether they will be getting a copy of this webinar for further references. Matotsi, quickly before
Talita.
we finish. Yep.
Talita, please.
Yes, sure. We have recorded and we will share it with everybody who's registered.
So thank you very much, and you should be getting a copy of the webinar as soon as it is ready. I want to thank the presenters. Rosetti, excellent work done. Dede and Mokgophana, it has been great that you have shared with us your experiences. Rosetti from the global level, Mokgophana starting in South Africa, and also Dede moving into West Africa, and also the colleagues who were able to share with us the experiences here in the chat, and also just telling us some of the things that is happening, such as Kenya and Zimbabwe. Please look at the link on Eval Partners that has been shared, and Rosetti has reminded all of us to kindly do attend AFREA. So with all of that, I want to say thank you all, and I wish you to continue learning more from the other gLOCAL events happening. Have a lovely day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.